Talk about a vision where I just get the pick, right? You know, here's the canvas and I'm just going to pick here, right? And obviously that produces a sort of an aspirational result. In a community like this, it's really important to think about and understand, or try and understand, is behaviour going to match that aspiration? So it's one thing to say, for example, we don't want X to happen, or we do want X to happen, but when push comes to shove, are people going to make that? Are they going to make the investments or the decisions? And you know, you can just look at some of the public debates that are happening right now, right, between what people want and what people are willing to do, right? So, and if there's a big cognitive dissonance in that, then you have an issue, which means you're not going to move forward probably. You can see some very strong issues that actually are very reinforcing to the preferred future. So sustainability in whatever version comes out as a very strong core value. And that's, you know, if you think of the scenario name, it's, you know, reinventing sustainability again. It's a core issue. I do think there are some blind spots about sustainability that I want to talk to, where I think that you might be living on the coattails of some investments that have been done before rather than being at the forefront, but I'll talk about that. The important thing is that there's a sense of things are building on each other as we move forward, and we have the courage to address some of the big issues that are our, you know, going to be make or break, right? So that's sort of a little of the context of this. I'm trying to indicate that these strategic pillars, if you get it right, can be sort of reinforcing. So you're trying to create a sort of a synergistic sort of an effect where investment in one area supports or mobilises investment in other areas and activity and so on. I'm not saying it's the perfect model in terms of standing in front of literally, you know, 1,000+ people on this community and having really quite important conversations. Is that the sense is that people are not satisfied that Hilton Head Island's merely good. People want it to be great, or to be extraordinary or exceptional. You know, many people here came here because of, you know, a very renowned brand. And I think as a contextual behaviour, we're sort of proposing that as a strategic pillar, because I think that's going to define how you might resolve some of the tough issues going forward. It's also a thread, actually, because we've been looking at what's the threads. It's a thread that really goes back over decades to both some of the founding concepts of the modern era of development. It's in previous visionary sort of documents in one form or another. But I think calling this out and thinking about how do we function at the level of excellence is important. And I don't just mean a nice coat of paint. You know, I'm talking about as a community that you have a focus on doing things as good as you can. You know, and I want to address later on, and I'll kind of weave this in now, but I think there are some sort of behaviours in the fabric of this community where it's a bit destructive, right? You know, it's like in terms of people pretty challenging about sort of decision making, and there's sort of like a tendency to go after each other a little bit. That to me is not a pursuit of excellence. That'll run you down to the lowest common denominator. You know, and the vision that is being articulated is going to require excellence in almost every dimension, if not every dimension. So it's just, we're going to peg that out there as a sort of an overarching philosophy. A proactive attempt from everybody to discover the way to have civil discussion. And I've stood in meetings where booing and hissing occurs, and I don't really think that is a behaviour that is going to create an environment where the original thinking can arise that you're going to need to solve some of your big issues. You know, I think we've all had the experience of being on committees where we end up with the absolute lowest common denominator, right? And the danger is, I think, if you're a hypercritical community, and you are in that, my assessment, you know, I say that as somebody who stands in front of a lot of communities, you're a hypercritical community, and not in a constructive sense, but in a destructive, where we're not going to respect the other view, I'm not going to listen, and I'm not going to open my mind to other alternatives that I haven't thought of. That's fine. People can conduct themselves however they want. However, the implication is that you will have declining participation, you'll have stagnation, you'll have the promise of something remarkable, but just somehow or other you never quite get there because you never get past the tennis match. And what I mean by the tennis match is polarised views. They say that, they say that, they say that, and they just amp up the intensity of that argument rather than find the way to come to a common ground. And as I said earlier, that's going to require the recognition of where I fit in that story, and if I'm the one who doesn't want change, I might have to give a little for something that's a greater shared good.